Welcome to the Africa Briefing Podcast, where we unpack the big stories shaping the continent, one conversation at a time. I'm John Ofeyansa, and today we are stepping into history. In this episode, we spotlight a moment that doesn't come around often, a moment that isn't just political, but deeply symbolic, profoundly inspiring, and potentially transformative. A moment that belongs to Namibia. This week's commentary comes from Africa Briefing contributing editor Valerie Msoka, whose full analysis appears in the next edition of our magazine. And I'll tell you now, it's a story you'll want to sit with, because Namibia has just done what no other African nation has achieved. For the first time in its history, and indeed in the history of the entire continent, and most probably in the world, women now lead the top 3 political offices in the country. Yes, all 3. The president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the National Assembly. It's not a quota. It's not a side note. It's the core of power. It's a deliberate shift in where power sits and who holds it. Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah, a liberation struggle veteran and seasoned diplomat, has become Namibia's first woman president. Flanked by 2 equally formidable women, she now leads a government that has not only rewritten history, but could help rewrite Africa's future. Valerie calls it a seismic shift, and she's not wrong. Because this is about more than just representation. This is about redefinition, about a country daring to say, women don't just belong at the table. They can build the table, set the agenda, and lead the room. But let's not pretend this moment appeared out of thin air. Valerie reminds us, this isn't just a sudden miracle. It's a result of years, decades of relentless advocacy, of constitutional reforms, and a political culture that slowly, steadily made space for equity to grow. And that's the heart of the story. It didn't happen because someone gave women power. It happened because women claimed it. They organized. They insisted. They showed up again and again in parliament, in party halls, in rural cooperatives, in courtrooms and classrooms. Namibia's leap forward has roots, deep ones, and now it has wings. But to truly understand the magnitude of this shift, we need to zoom out a bit. Africa is not unfamiliar with powerful women. Let's not forget, Rwanda holds the record for the highest percentage of women in parliament anywhere in the world, over 60%. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has proved that women can lead at the very top in East Africa. Liberia too gave the continent its first female president in Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Even Senegal and South Africa have made serious strides in female political participation. But what Namibia has done here is unique, because this isn't just one woman at the top. This is a cohesive leadership structure built with gender parity at its center, not its sidelines. And what does that mean for the rest of the continent? It means that every young girl in Africa, from the bustling avenues of Accra to the dusty roads of Goma, can look up and see a reflection of her potential It sends a message, clear and fierce. You belong in every room where decisions are made. But it's not just a message for girls. It's a message for political parties, for institutions, for the African Union, for parliaments, cabinets, and voters. It tells them gender equality in leadership isn't a luxury. It's not a borrowed idea from the West. It's a homegrown truth. It's an African evolution. Of course, we must be careful not to romanticize the moment. As Valerie points out, progress like this exists alongside obstacles that are still painfully real. Deep-rooted patriarchy, political resistance, underfunded campaigns, and gender-based violence that silences too many voices before they even reach a podium. But this moment, it gives us a blueprint. And it reminds us that blueprints only matter if we build from them. Namibia's bold shift must now be matched by equally bold reforms. In law, in policy, in budget priorities, in education systems. Gender parity must be more than political. It must be economic, social, and cultural. And our regional bodies, SADC, ECOWAS, EAC, the African Union, must do more than pass declarations. They must enforce quotas, fund leadership training, demand accountability, and ensure that gender parity is not an event, but a permanent fixture of our democratic architecture. So here's the question Valerie leaves us with, and it's a powerful one. The question, she writes, is no longer whether Africa is ready for women leaders. The evidence shows it is. The question is how fast and how boldly will we move? Because Namibia has moved. Now the spotlight shifts to the rest of us. To you listening, to your political parties, to your leaders, to your daughters and your sons. Namibia has offered us a glimpse of what African leadership can look like. The challenge now is whether others will follow or be left behind in a world where equality is no longer optional. It's essential. That was Africa Briefing Podcast, featuring insights from Valerie Msoka, contributing editor and longtime advocate for women's rights across the continent. Her full piece appears in the next edition of Africa Briefing magazine. Be sure to read it, share it, teach it, let it travel far and wide. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to follow us online for more stories that move Africa forward. Until next time, keep your mind on Africa and keep hope alive. Goodbye.